Hi, and welcome to the THC Show with Neil. I'm your host, Neil Magnuson, and this is the show where we try to expose some of the nasty truths in our world, but don't leave you without some hope and hopefully some ways to change things. Today on the show, we have Dave Hill. He's the force behind the 420 Farmers Market that have been such a thorn in the side of those monopolists and prohibitionists for a number of years here in Vancouver. And very fortunate to have Dave coming on the show to talk about his role in helping to keep access for people. Also, Cindy's here to join us for the 420 session. 8 out of 10 Glenn from Canamatch.ca is on his way to the Prairie Medicinal Cup, and I hope he has as much fun as he can. I hope you stay safe on the road there, Glenn, and it should be an awesome weekend in Saskatoon. Also, Jerry Martin will be visiting us for the Martin Medical Moment, where we take a look at what's going on in the world of court challenges to do with access to medical cannabis for people. On the show, first up, we have some breaking news on the show. Our extensive network of intrepid investigative journalists, in conjunction with several dozen of the world's leading academics and using state-of-the-art computing, have conclusively determined that we've been lied to for decades by our public servants, and that the corruption runs very deep and it runs right to the top. For decades, activists have been exposing the corruption by showing that the attempt to demonize and prohibit cannabis is based completely on lies. In fact, the opposite of these lies is really the truth. I'm just an ordinary guy, but I have a pretty good sense of what's right and what's wrong. And I got to tell you, if things were right, our public servants would be up on the rooftops yelling about how they've discovered this amazing, miraculous plant in nature, and that it is medicine, and it's fuel, and it's textiles, and food, and so much more, and that they're going to be making sure, as our public servants, the people we pay to look after us and serve our interests, that they're going to make sure that everybody gets to benefit from this plant. That's what would be happening if things were right in this world. But instead, our governments are exposing how corrupt they are by putting together a regulatory scheme for this amazing, miraculous plant that simply grows naturally in nature, that is pumping the price up to the thousands of dollars per pound. And, to do that, it's got to be something else, because, there's nothing in the grocery store, in the produce section, there's nothing in the herbal medicine stores that comes anywhere close to being over $10 a pound for anything that farmers are growing and horticulturists are producing that are being brought to market for people to use for a variety of different things that we use these foods and these herbal medicines for. But here we have this one herbal medicine, this plant that we've had a symbiotic relationship with and have co-evolved with over the years. And it helps us in so many ways. It is so beneficial, and it is the least dangerous of all of those. Of all of the different plants and herbs and produce that are in the grocery stores and drugstores and natural stores, they're all able to kill you if you overdose and eat too much of it. They can all be misused in ways that are dangerous, and many of the plants in our environment are very dangerous, but not cannabis. In fact, all of these things have what's called an LD50 rating. If you look that up, it means that at a particular dose, 50% of average people would die at that dose. And all of these things, like I say, in the grocery stores and drugstores, they all have an LD50 rating that's quite easily attainable. You can pretty quickly die of a dozen raw potatoes or 24 liters of water, and everything has it. And cannabis has it too, but it's not attainable. It's 1,500 pounds in 10 minutes. If you could ingest that much of the active ingredient of cannabis, they suspect that it might kill 50% of the adults that do that. But of course, it's never been tested, and we've never had a fatality from cannabis. And so it's not about it being dangerous. The reason that cannabis can fetch so much more money than any of these other things that grow in gardens and greenhouses is simply because of a false supply and demand economy being propped up by corrupt governments and gangsters who want to keep making huge bucks on something that they've been making huge bucks on for a long time. And it's completely not right at all. It's actually really, really destructive to our society, to this planet, to our families, to individuals, and everybody that's not on the dollar-making side of prohibition and now this so-called legalization, which is just another way of prohibiting. As long as there's criminal penalties and outlawing different people from having different amounts of cannabis, it is not legalized, and we are not free, and it's not a free cannabis market. The whole prohibition has been such a farce since the beginning. It's been nothing but a huge lie and a bunch of lies, and it's been repeated over and over again and backed up by different governments and scientific bodies that are working for these people that just want to exploit us as best they can and maximize the profits that they can make. And this has been a real cash cow for people for a very long time. But it's just not right. And what we're trying to show here on this show is that, things have gotten beyond reason. And we need to have reasonableness brought back into our world. We need to have reasonableness with respect to these public servants. Public servants are people we pay, not to be our boss, not to tell us what we can and cannot do, but to help us and protect us and serve us and educate us and bring to us all the things that we need. It's like having good, skilled people that you pay to do a job for you, and that's who these people are supposed to be, and that's what they're supposed to be doing, and they're supposed to be serving our interests. But instead, our system is corrupt, and it's not designed properly, or maybe it was that way from the start, or maybe these are just loopholes that have been grasped upon and taken by these corporate elite and these rich people to use so that we can be their pawns and they can exploit us. And certainly that's what's going on with cannabis. In fact, I put together a list of some reasons why cannabis should not be prohibited with the criminal law or any other type of law. In fact, it should be encouraged for people, and our public servants should be helping us to get access to it as easy as possible, as cheap as possible. Make sure those that can't afford it get it, because it's just that good, and so we should all be enjoying the fruits of this particular plant in a free country with public servants. So I think that all of these points that I will make, and they're in no particular order, but any one of them stands on its own, that all by itself, that's enough of a reason and then some to stop using any penalties against people that would have possession of or help other people get access to this amazing plant. And the first one is it's a pain reliever. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's a violence suppressor. It's a sleep aid. It's a seizure-ending medicinal herb that is so amazing because it mimics our own interior endocannabinoid systems, where these same cannabinoids on the cannabis plant are manufactured by our body to maintain balance and homeostasis amongst our different systems within the body. So this is medicine for people, and just about everybody has issues that they need some sort of medicine for. I mean, it's helping people sleep. I mean, it's helping people with pain. It's all of these things, so that anybody in our world, any free citizen in a free country, should be free to have possession of this amazing plant in whatever form they want, because it's helping them sleep. It's helping them with pain. It's helping them with a whole bunch of things. So who the hell would it be that would come along and tell a person that they couldn't have that, or that it's somehow illegal to have that, and that there's criminal penalties against having that, when there's certainly no justification for any of those penalties, but there's plenty of justification for anybody to have some of this medicine that heals you and helps you like none of these pharmaceutical synthetics ever could. So that all by itself should be enough reason for our government to immediately stop spending our tax dollars and leave people alone that want to have just a medicinal herb that's going to help them. And actually, there's one more that it helps us with that I didn't even mention. That's probably the most important of all, and that's that it helps people have fun. and people need to have fun, and laughter is the best medicine after all. But we're all just out here trying to have fun, and why the hell wouldn't we want to have fun in a world so filled with so much things that make people depressed, that something that'll help you have fun all by itself, you should be allowed to have that in a free country with public servants. You should be allowed to have something that allows you to have fun and feel good. So that in itself, all by itself, no more criminal penalties for pot. We're not getting there yet, okay? All right, so I got one more. How about it's a fantastic alternative to opioids and other hard drugs that people get addicted to and have terrible side effects from. Cannabis, especially in its edible and concentrated form, is an excellent substitute for just about everything that those other drugs would be helping people with. And if people knew that and had proper access to it, then we wouldn't have an opioid overdose crisis. And in fact, just as many people are dying from alcohol, but we don't talk about that one. But cannabis also could supplant the use of alcohol, and people could be using that for having fun or killing their pain or whatever you're using alcohol from. So because it's a fantastic alternative to opioids and other harsh drugs, that all by itself, there should be no criminal penalties for anybody found in possession of cannabis or trying to help other people get access to it. There's just no justification that would ever rise above the fact that it's going to help people not die from harsh street drugs and opioids and other drugs that are killing people. So all by itself, just because it's a fantastic substitute for those things, there should be certainly no criminal penalties by our public servants for us free people having possession of this amazing herb. So I got another one. How about that it's a green alternative to fossil fuels? That's right. Cannabis is way more efficient than fossil fuels. Just by using cannabis, it would be 5 times cheaper for us to fuel our vehicles the way that we are with fossil fuels. And it's 10 times more efficient than corn, you know, that food crop that we use for fuel a lot of times. Cannabis should be used for fuel because it's a great fuel source. And just because it's a great fuel source, and we've got climate change issues and all kinds of worries about our climate and how we're, putting too much carbon into our world and burning all these fossil fuels, that all by itself should be a good reason to leave people the hell alone in a free country, you public servants, if people have access and have possession of cannabis. And I got another one on my list. I got quite a few of them, and each one of these I think stands all by itself. And the next one on my list, it's toilet paper. Sounds silly, I know. But if you really did the math on just how much toilet paper people are using every single hour of every single day all around the globe, and realize how much trees are being cut down and destroyed, we're back to climate change issues again and cutting down trees. So yeah, cannabis is a really nice green alternative to cutting down trees and using them to wipe our asses with. And I think that all by itself, if you actually looked at the math and the economics on that, you'd figure out pretty quick that all by itself is a good enough reason to not have criminal penalties against people that would possess or help other people possess cannabis. And so I got another one. I got a few of them. I'm going to go through them because this is important. How about we don't have enough tax dollars to fund all of these $1 million enforcement regimes that are trying to protect the government lack of profits in their stores, and the other reasons why we're using the criminal law and our precious police and tax resources to try to go after people that are growing plants for medicinal purposes, to help people feel better, to have a little fun, because nobody's growing it to hurt anybody with. They might be using it to make money. Money's a good thing. People need money. People should be allowed to make money in a free country with public servants on land that they own with seeds that they can acquire. Like, it just ain't nobody's business what you're doing and what you're growing if you're not hurting somebody else. So there's not enough tax dollars for us to be using it to go after people for pot. There's just not. There's a whole bunch of other things in our world that we need those tax dollars for. We don't have enough of them because the corruption runs really deep in our country, and we're filling the pockets of a lot of rich guys, and we got to be able to keep doing that, or those rich guys are going to pull their corporations and pull their services, and then we're all going to be in lots of trouble, huh? So yeah, we should stop spending tax dollars on penalties for pot, on judges, on courts, on prisons, on police, on advertising, on anything to do with trying to keep people from getting access to cannabis. We should stop spending our tax dollars on, because we need those tax dollars for other things. How about just the costs, the dangers, and the consequences of trying to prohibit something, because that doesn't work. And we figured that out a long time ago, that it doesn't work for us, it doesn't work for the people to ever try to prohibit things that are actually causing problems in our world. That prohibiting things causes those problems to get worse. It increases the demand. It exacerbates all the abuse issues. And it causes disrespect for police. It causes violence. And then money laundering. Don't get me going on all the money that's being drained out of our society and traded in for pennies on the dollar over on overseas accounts and other ways that they do it, that it's gone from our economy because of money laundering, because these systems are put underground instead of above ground, and we don't even collect taxes on them, and then we get only pennies on the dollars for what should be in our economy. So, there's just all these other costs and all these other consequences that happen when you try to prohibit things. It doesn't work for anybody but the people making money on prohibition. It certainly doesn't make the situation you're trying to make any better. So that one stands on its own. We shouldn't waste another dime prohibiting cannabis or try to enforce people not to have cannabis or help other people get cannabis. Not one more dime, because it doesn't work, because it makes things worse, because it's a waste of our money. We're throwing it down the toilet. We're lighting it on fire. It's even worse than that. So there's those reasons, and that one stands on its own, doesn't it? I got another one. I got a couple more. How about the fact that these laws are not enforced equally? That it's a very racist set of laws, that it preys on poor people and people of minorities, and has since the beginning, and still is doing that now. That the poor people and the minorities, the ones that are least able to fend for themselves, are the ones that are most hurt by these laws. And in the case of cannabis and medical cannabis, it's got a lot to do with people that are sick and suffering, that they also don't get access to these things because of these prohibitions, and that's hurting them. So we're hurting our poor people, we're hurting our sick people, we're hurting the people of minorities, and for that reason and that reason alone, we should stop the prohibition on cannabis and the attempt to keep people from possessing it and accessing it and helping other people access it. All by itself, that's a real good reason to stop doing this. Now I got another one. It's called corruption. Because when you got plants that are now worth $2,000 a pound instead of like $10 a pound like they should be, then there's all kinds of room for corruption. When you've got organized criminal groups that are making horrendous amounts of money because of those prohibition prices and all of that, and what are they going to do with that money? Well, they're going to try to further their interests. They're going to try to get politicians on their side. They're going to buy whoever they can buy. And that's been going on forever. The corruption runs deep, and it's very clear and obvious in this country that our politicians are being bought and paid for by these corrupt mafia types. And that's one reason alone to stop the whole idea of trying to prohibit cannabis and keeping prices up at prohibition plus pricing and get it down to where it belongs as a fruit and a vegetable and natural healthcare product. So just because of the availability and the opportunity for corruption is an idea all by itself that is enough that we should not be prohibiting cannabis or people who want to access cannabis. And I got one more, and that is that it's a plant, people. It's just a bloody plant. One of the best ones, one of the least toxic ones. You can die from almost all the plants. Some of them are extremely poisonous. Some of the ones you're growing in your garden and have as houseplants are extremely poisonous. And yet, here we are spending all this money, making it a criminal offense to grow, have, possess, sell this one plant that is least toxic of all the other ones, more valuable than all the other ones, and this is supposed to be a free country. It's a plant in a free country with public servants, and it ain't nobody's business but ours what we do in this free country until we're harming somebody else. It certainly isn't the business of our public servants to decide that they're nannies and guardians and caretakers and dictators and tyrants and pieces of shit that can tell us that we can't even have access to the best plant in nature for no good reason. I just compiled a list there that I think each one stands on their own. There's 9 points there. I challenge any of you prohibitionists to put together a list with any justification at all for using our tax dollars, our police resources, and anything to do with criminalizing or penalizing people for having possession of cannabis, growing it or selling it or anything like that. Give me anything. You got nothing. There is no justification. I spent a long time thinking about it. I couldn't come up with any counter justification except that it makes rich people richer, and they're the ones who control us, and we seem to be belong to them, and I'm fed up about it. I feel like the guy back in the movie back in the day that just got up and started yelling out his window that I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. Well, I'm mad as hell about all this, and you should be too, because this is wrong. And it's 4:20, and I blew right through the news. We're going to do the news afterwards. That's a good idea. Thanks, Anil. So it's 4:20, and 8 out of 10, Glenn is on his way to the Saskatoon Medicinal Harvest Cup there, and good on him for going there and supporting that, and I hope there's a whole bunch of people jumping in your cars and heading there as well. And so in his space today to help me with the 4:20 session, because damn it, I need help, is Cindy Heemeryck. And she's an assistant to Dana Larson, one of the top activists that's been at it for a long time, putting her heart and soul and all of her time into trying to make the world a better place. And she's here with me for the 4:20 session. How you doing, Cindy?
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
it's an honor to be
very
here.
happy
I
to
know
have
I've tried to be here a couple times.
I tried to have you a couple times. Well, once anyway, because
Life
Glenn
is so
bailed on me
busy.
once, you know.
Busy all the time.
I know you are. I know you are. You went to a couple of different things.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to the spirit medicine conference in just a sec, but there was one a little bit before that you went to. It was about accessing a safe supply.
It was called the Safe Supply Conference 2019. It was held in a beautiful location on Pender Island. Mm-hmm. It was put on by the BC Yukon activist group, right? The
users group,
right? And so they were the one that supplied everything, and they brought people in from all over the province. Peers, they like to call themselves peers. So peers came in all over the province. We had 2 full days of talking and planning, and they're going to come back and execute some of the ideas that have been coming around.
They got some money, I understand.
They do have some money coming. I think we're going to see some mobile type vehicles coming out that are going to be able to go around the province and help set up overdose prevention sites, and that's really important.
And all of this was pretty much about a safe supply of heroin and other of those hard drugs or substitutes, but not cannabis.
No, cannabis was mentioned once or twice, and I did find myself smoking alone a few times, but these people are active drug users. Yep. That's what they like to call themselves, and they're the ones that are dying of fentanyl overdoses, and those are the ones we need to listen to. They're very well spoken, and they know what they're talking about.
Right, and it's their lives, and it's their decisions on what they do. My issue is that they are not being made aware or made able to access, the real safe supply in my mind, which is cannabis in the form of edibles and concentrates. That if that knowledge was out there more than it is, then there'd be more talk about, that's part of the safe supply that many of them would like. We've been demonstrating that, as you know, here in Vancouver, right in the heart of that community, right at the user group headquarters there, and had phenomenal success in keeping a couple hundred people that we all know by name now as they come through our lineup after 2.5 years. And that is the safe supply. And so I'm hoping that there'll be more than just a couple mentions in future conferences, and that they will be, trying to include that in the options.
I think they will. It's just not the drug of choice for most of these people, although it may still be my drug of choice.
Well, but and I have some knowledge of that, actually. Yeah. I mean, I've been on, working on the downtown east side in a couple different capacities with Van Du over many, many years. And our experience at the Herb School was that, cannabis was not well respected amongst the hard drug users. I mean, it was kind of like poo-poo, that doesn't do nothing, but that's in the smoked form. That most of them weren't aware of the increased power of cannabis when it's taken as an edible or even in the concentrates. That that's a whole different thing. That you can't smoke too much weed. They'd smoke a couple of joints of the best weed and get about as high as you could get off of that, and it would be nothing in comparison to what they need to kill the pain that they're dealing with. And so it would be like, well, I kind of like the buzz, but it's not going to get me through a night of withdrawal, and it's not going to, kill that thumping void or whatever it is that's going on there. So edibles is different. Right. And that's what we're demonstrating at Van Du. And for those people that get that knowledge and then come and try it, if they do it right and they find that right dose, for most of them, in my experience, most of them can find that as a path off of the hard drugs. So looking forward to future conferences and wanting to be a little more a part of the conversation with the safe supply.
I remember you telling me before I left, make sure you bring it up, right, a couple of times, and I did.
Yeah,
but
and that's good. I mean, we need to just keep doing that. I want to mention
just one more thing. Dr. Tyndall, I'm sure you've heard of him. He has talked about having the vending machines.
Right.
Well, it's happening. He was there. He was one of the speakers. They had lawyers. They had doctors. I mean, this conference was really well prepared, right?
So those vending machines should have cannabis high-dose edibles in them.
They could. They're not very big.
Should.
They look about like the size of those parking meters where we put our money in, those new ones. They're about that size. And it's going to have palm recognition. So
I see. So you have to have somebody's permission to be able to use it.
Well, you have to go to the Crosstown Clinic and probably
register
be part of the trial or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
So that's something that they said that is happening very soon. So unfortunately, we're not going to see them though. They're going to be in the OPS and they're going to be in places where people can access them and they're not going to be destroyed or tampered with, right? But this is something. This
so
is
the
a
general
step in the
public
right
really
direction.
won't have access to them for the most part.
No, but maybe one day.
I'm sure the general public kind of likes that idea.
Well, for now. But maybe at 880 one day we could have one there at 880 East Hastings at the Harm Reduction Center. Maybe one day.
I want them with cannabis edibles.
Well, do you know Dr. Tyndall? Perhaps you should send him an email.
We should converse about that a little bit.
I'll go with you. We'll go to the Crosstown Clinic. I'd love to go there.
Yeah, let's go there and talk to them about that because it needs to be an option for people, and that word needs to get out there. And if it was right there and people knew that, well, I can have this or this, well, they'd be more likely to try that. And then if they try it properly, then it can work. So that's very interesting. And then, so this past weekend, you were at the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference. And
I was.
Did you get psychedelically stoned?
I was offered many things. When you have a booth there, many people come by, and they show you their wares, let's say. But
I think that's what Pierre Elliott Trudeau said when he was asked about whether or not he'd ever smoked cannabis. He said, I've tried many things.
Yeah.
Many things.
Oui.
But a Renaissance man,
He was. I met him too when I was little.
And now his son is the biggest pot dealer in Canada.
Him too.
And working hard with our tax dollars to be the only pot dealer in Canada. What a guy.
Yeah. I got one thing.
You got one, okay.
But the conference this weekend was great. I mean, there was about 500 or 600 people there. We had a booth, unfortunately, out in the hallway, so we weren't actually in the auditorium. There was some booths around the perimeter, but ours was out in the hallway, so I didn't get to take part in as many projects or talks as I would have liked to, but I did see a couple of panels, and I did see Dr. Hayden's 40-minute speech, which is really good. And I wish I would have got here earlier because I would have gave you the new Maps Canada video. Okay. It's maybe I can give it to
you can give it to Neil. Yeah. We'll put it on there.
And we'll get it up there because I took it off the big screen and not too many people have seen it yet, and it's really impressive. Just where they are, what they plan on doing, and the future. And
you've seen Dr. Hayden a number of times.
I've met him a few times.
Has he evolved much in the way of his regulations and way of dealing with things? Or
well, from what I understand, he's really evolved, and they're like going to the federal government and they're seeking funding and other things and he's quite confident that they're going to get it. Yeah. Right, so it also talks about that in this video trailer.
So what will that mean? LPs for mushrooms?
It's funny you should ask because there was plenty of people there this weekend. Like, I work at the Medicinal Mushroom Dispensary, right? And so that's who we had our booth with. Also, the Get Your Drugs Tested. We had side-by-side booth. Right.
Don't need to test the mushrooms, I guess.
We can't test plant matter, unfortunately, on the FTIR spectrometer. Right. You can only test powders, liquids, and gels.
I see.
So, so many people. I mean, people from the States, people from Alberta, people from BC. They would come by the booth and they were always like, "Where do you get your mushrooms from?" Well, let me tell you, I can undercut or I can grow them here. We've got a massive grow show. Like, I heard so many good things. Like, it's really taking off Canada-wide, let's say, right? It's not just in BC anymore.
Oh, no, and many places in the States. I mean, Chicago now is voting on it. Denver's got it going on. Oakland already passed it. So, yeah.
So many people are into the mushrooms and the LSD, and I heard they had all kinds of MDMA and MDMT and like just you name it. I really didn't sample a lot of things. I was either at my booth or outside smoking joints and talking to people
MDMA's
that
got
way.
a bad rap because that's always considered ecstasy, although ecstasy typically has MDMA with a lot of things added to it or other things that are possibly in there, a lot more speedy or whatever. But MDMA itself is a pretty wonderful drug.
Well, that's
it really
what the
helps
trials
people.
are for at MAPS right now, right? That's what they have had approval for in the past, is for working with that. Of course, they want to move on to mushrooms and ibogaine and everything else, right?
But for couples that are having issues,
now,
for people that are having intimacy issues and things like that, MDMA is incredible at its ability to break down barriers and allow people to understand other people better and communicate better. I found it to be just the most incredible drug to facilitate that type of counseling, and should be used, and that was its original intent as well.
Right.
So
well, there was some of that there too, but
maybe we're going to grow up as a society with respect to how we handle
and
these
look
things.
at psychedelics differently. Well,
Not as long as weed is $2,000 a pound.
That is true. But mushrooms.
Or $5 if you're an
the
LP.
markup is so much less. Like, it's not a cash crop. Any of these things, really. So it's more for the love of the plants, spirit plants, right?
I mean, the whole spirit of cannabis was not about making money on it ever. That was not the whole idea. It was kind of antipathy of the idea. It was like the idea is that we give it to each other, is that we share it amongst ourselves, that it's nature giving us this amazing plant that helps us spiritually and emotionally and physically and all these different wonderful things it does for us. And it was never meant to be capitalized on. It's blasphemous.
Yes.
It's sacrilegious. It's wrong. And we shouldn't support those that are just trying to capitalize and put greed over people. And for sure. Well,
is that our moment?
I think we did 10 minutes there.
Oh, okay, that was fun.
You got more you want to tell me?
No, I think that Neil and Jerry probably had a better experience at the conference than I did, because I was at our booth out in the hallway most of the time.
Right.
But so make sure you ask them like what they took in, because I'm sure they have better stories. But it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of people. I look forward to networking again. And
do you think they were all high on psychedelics? I'm just joking.
Well, ask me. I don't know. Like some might have been, but the food was.
Oh,
good.
I am sure some might have been.
There wasn't a lot of driving. People were there to stay. The conference was really long. It was from 9 in the morning till 10 at night.
Right.
That is a long day. These guys both know. Like, it's a super long day, but they survived it too. So. Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you for having me, Neil.
Thanks for coming. We'll have you on again, first chance we get, and you can come back and report anytime, of course, on the CSP update. You can slide things in there anytime you want as well.
Maybe there's one more thing. Did you talk about the dispensary raid?
Well, we're getting to that.
Okay.
That's kind of up next.
Okay.
We're gonna do that before the Martin, because we're doing that right after this.
Okay,
we're squeezing that in now.
That was quite the day. First time in 11 years.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. And we're going to talk about that right away here as well. Should I go back to this one?
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Thanks, Cindy. Are you hanging around a little bit?
I had party until 5.
Because I'm going to have to see you for those things.
Yeah.
Yes, because I want the pain
Are we on a
cream.
break now?
Nope, we're live on air, and I'm just asking you because I don't want you just to run right out of here.
Yeah, no, I'll leave you a little note.
Okay, leave me a note, and you can leave me what you have if you want, and I'll catch up to you later. All right. Oh, move the mic.
Okay,
right.
bye everyone. Thanks again.
All right, you're welcome. Yeah, the dreaded CSU is back at it again. They're raiding places. Today they're raiding the 99 North in Squamish. Just disgusting, these people. I can't stand what they're doing here. I'm so upset about it. They raided the Healing Tree here in Vancouver the other day. They raided, of course, the stock market. We reported on that. We had our protest scheduled for last Wednesday outside the VPD headquarters because of the stock market and the other raids. And that morning they decided to raid the medicinal cannabis dispensary on Thurlow, Dana's store there. And this is absolutely outrageous. We were so upset. I yelled at so many cops that day about what the hell are they doing? Why would our police be supporting them? And these CSU I want to swear. I want to use the worst language I can on them. They're absolute scum. What the hell are they doing? There's people that were in tears, both staff and patients that were now being denied access, and the government stores are not helping these sick people get the medicine that they need. It is absolutely disgusting what they are doing there. So very, very upset about that, and do what you can. I mean, write letters to the people involved. I wrote a letter to John Horgan and took him to task on it, and everybody should do that. Everybody should write to everybody they can think of, Adrian Dixon, Farnworth, and Judy Darcy, and these people that are involved in this. They need to give their heads a shake and stop supporting this criminal so-called legalization and the protection racket that's being run with our tax dollars through violence and robbery by these so improperly named community safety unit people. They're the corrupt shutdown unit. I wish I could think up an acronym that would suit them, but they're just below scum. So here's a video to show a little bit about what's going on with that kind of stuff.
Emotions running high inside the dispensary. The Grey Market pot shop on Thurlow was raided Wednesday morning. Every gram of product on the shelves seized. Dana Larson, who owns the shop, says this is not serving the public's needs.
This was not a priority for them, and that if you were in compliance with city bylaws, you were going to be left alone as long as you're making a good faith effort to go into the legal system.
While the cops were bagging and boxing, outside customers continued to try the door. A steady stream of medical patients and seniors baffled that their local dispensary was out of business.
Right now, because I don't have my medicine, I'm very sick and shaken here. It's not right. I'm a resident of Canada. I'm 69 years old with cancer. Why can't I come to a nice place and buy my weed?
While protesters were blaming the VPD for the raid, spokespeople say the department only assisting the Community Safety Unit, a provincial government agency tasked with upholding the new laws around cannabis. According to the Minister of Public Safety, the Grey Market operators were given plenty of notice.
I think the Community Safety Unit, at last count, I think there's been about 50 some odd illegal operations that have either shut down voluntarily or have had their product and the cash confiscated.
While Larson is operating outside the legal framework, he is in the process of applying for a license. In the meantime, he says this store, with a loyal customer base, will reopen. Aaron MacArthur, Global News.
They've been hitting municipally licensed dispensaries over the last couple of weeks. They don't charge or arrest anybody. They just come in, take all the cannabis, and leave. Instead of putting so much money and effort into arresting people for cannabis, they should be putting money and effort into creating a safe drug supply overall and in fixing their own house, because there's a reason that people are coming to our shop and shops like it that are not fully within the legal system yet. And it's because our cannabis is higher quality, lower prices, and better selection. As long as we're needed, we want to be here. A lot of our members are medical users. Maybe even the majority of people here are medical users. We're right close to St. Paul's Hospital. We're serving a community for almost 10 years here. They need cannabis access. And we are in the process of trying to get a legal permit. But even when we get that, that's going to mean a big problem because most of our community isn't going to be served well through the legal system.
For too many years, we've had to stand out on these streets crying for our rights as adults to consume a substance that doesn't hurt us. It's unbelievable in my mind that we're here again today. The numbers of years I've had to do this pales by comparison to how our Indigenous community has fought their whole lives for centuries against this kind of bullshit. I have come here to support my sister Vicky, whose shop was raided a week ago by the CSU and BPD. I stand here to oppose the CSU and the BPD supporting them. Cannabis is not a community safety hazard. It never has been, it never will be. We must stop these people from treating it like this. Dana Larson's dispensary was raided this morning. Again, another colonial movement against cannabis. My whole life, they've been lying to me about its dangers and have been enforcing a stupid and hurtful law because of their lies. Cannabis is not harmful. Stop lying and making a living off saying that it is.
Yeah, it's just disgusting that they would be shutting down medical cannabis dispensaries to protect non-medical government stores. The courts have ruled that storefront dispensaries are crucial to access. They're at the heart of access for medical patients. That's Judge Phelan in the Allard case declared that. And even without that, I mean, these are sick and suffering people that are getting help from people who care about them and are providing cannabis products to them that help them feel better. Like, where's the crime in that? Why would we be wasting tax dollars and using the criminal law to shut down places that are simply helping people feel better? And in a world where even our courts have said that that's a crucial thing for people to have access through that, and yet we're somehow politicians, public servants, are making the decision to allocate funds and resources to block people's access and to shut down places that are trying to help people, places that are perfectly willing to pay their taxes, that are trying to do what is the right thing to do in a very questionable world where we're not sure about all kinds of legalities about lots of these things. It's been in flux for a while. And here we are, the government is still going ahead with completely blocking access by shutting out all the dispensaries, and their only reason is to protect the financial interests of these non-medical government stores. Shame on them. Absolute criminals doing this and really, really hurting people in serious ways. And on this show, we try to dedicate this coming segment to talking about that and to talking about the fight for medical access to cannabis through these storefront dispensaries. And on the Martin Medical Moment, named such because Jerry Martin is a dispensary owner that's caught in the middle of all of this and is an example of exactly what's going on. Jerry owned a dispensary in small town Saskatchewan and ran it for 4 years and had a client base of about 1,000 people that all had their doctors on board, and he was doing everything the way Health Canada had suggested that it should be done. And after 4 years, they decided to shut him down. And when he didn't shut down voluntarily, they came and arrested him and charged him and seized his properties. And he's now still fighting that with the courts and hoping for a day in court. It's been 3+ years now. And still, maybe they say this spring he might actually get a day in court and be able to address it there, where I'm sure he's going to kick their butt because they have no justification for what they're doing. And Jerry was simply harming no one and helping many and trying to do it the right way. And there certainly should be no penalty that any Canadians would agree to for that kind of behavior. That's what a good Canadian does. Good people break bad laws, and these bad laws need to be broken, and they've been that way for quite a while. That's why we've gotten to where we are here. So joining me in studio, as always, for this session, I'm very happy to have Jerry Martin, and he can give us his own update on his case and other things going on in his life. So, how you doing, Jerry?
Good, doing really good.
That's good. I dropped that last week too. I have to stop. Only twice, apparently. That's my motto. So, yeah, nothing new with your case, eh? You're in limbo at this point, waiting for a supposed date this spring.
Well, we're having issues now. We're having witness issues. He's trying to get us to fly everybody out now to make it more expensive and more difficult for me. So now we're switching up witnesses.
So this is the prosecutor that wants this to happen?
Yeah. So we may not agree to their statement of facts now if they're going to be pricks. So this may drag on longer. May end up having to go to pre-trial beforehand and then go from there.
I see.
Yeah.
And on it goes.
Yeah, and on it goes. It doesn't ever end.
Jerry's is one of a few constitutional challenges that are happening across Canada. Sarah McNeil up in has a court date in Red Deer coming up in February. I'm not sure if that date is solidified yet, but in February there will be final arguments, and so if you're anywhere near that area, that's one where you can actually go and see what's going on, and I'm sure that'll be very interesting, and she could really use your support on that. And Chris Enns, I didn't hear an update. The judge was deliberating. I'm sure once it happens, we'll
I
hear.
seen him post something today on the other raids, but I don't think we've heard anything from him yet. But It's got to be soon.
So, we see what the courts will have to say about these things. Although it doesn't seem to matter much, there's been lots of court decisions in the past, and still we're where we are fighting these things. And in many ways, it's worse than it was before. I know in some ways it's better than it was before. People can kind of have weed on them. I kind of like that. I can walk past a cop smoking a joint without and I did before as a medical user, but there still was that potential for, getting, shook down by the cop, and then not believing the medical or making me prove it all.
Well, there still is that potential because, if they don't see that container, they can say, hey,
I haven't felt that. No, I don't have to have a container, Jerry. Here in BC,
Vancouver.
You can
Not
grow your
Vancouver.
own. You can grow your own in BC. You don't have to have the government container. You got it from a friend that grew it and gifted it to you, or you grew it yourself. You're good. And I feel that. I do feel that when I'm out there in public that there's that sort of freedom a little bit, but it's just a token freedom, compared to the other lack of access and what they've done with medical access. And still, they busted a guy in Edmonton just yesterday or day before for having, too many plants. And fuck off. Get out of our lives. Senior Trudeau said the government should get out of people's bedrooms. Well, I'm telling you, Junior Trudeau better get the hell out of people's grow rooms. It's none of their business what's going on in those grow rooms. We can be growing whatever the hell we want in there, heirloom tomatoes or orchids or, whatever the hell we want. We're growing plants. We're human beings. We're part of nature. This is our nature. It's not their nature. They don't own us. They don't own the plants. Get the fuck out of our lives. Enough already.
Face there.
Yeah. No, it's just insane. So you were saying something about a meeting with a doctor. What's that about?
Yeah, so I just had, I was also at the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference just the last day. I missed the first couple, but it was awesome.
Okay, cool.
I went to the after party. It was really cool.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that as well. But first, the doctor. Is that where you were talking to him, I guess?
So I released my company, Microdelics, for microdosing, mushrooms, LSD, psychedelics, period. In the last week. So I've had quite the response to that. About 250,000 people in the last, so I had a really interesting, I was reached out to by Dr. Knowles from the Delos Psych Research Group out of the U.S., and they're funded by the Beckley Foundation.
Right.
So they do a lot of studies. So they want to do a study on LSD and Canadians. So I've got the outline of that study. It's quite extensive. I just spent an hour on the phone. I had to cut it short so I could get here on time, on a webcam.
Thanks for doing that.
He would like to partner with Microdelics and do a study up here and then make a business out of it. So, and we just had another really interesting fact is that 1P LSD is legal here. So we're going to look into the pharmacology of that as well, so that we can not only provide it to just Canadians, but to the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and 250,000 responses.
Yeah.
So there's a real huge interest in psychedelics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And is that pretty much North America?
No, the whole world. I've had orders from every corner of the world you can think of.
Wow.
I've had to turn them all down at this time, but if we do switch to the 1P LSD, as long as the pharmacology is the same or similar enough, then we can do that legally, and that'll open up a lot of doors for us.
I see, and so there's ongoing studies about these things as well, and that might help open some doors.
There is. So we were just talking about that earlier. If we were to do this in the U.S., we're probably looking at 2 years. We've got to go through FDA approval. There's a whole bunch of them. But because we may do it in Canada with a U.S. company, we might be able to skip all those down to one criteria and be able to do the study here. And we'll be doing different ones on creativity and things like that.
Right on. And so you had a good time at the last day of the Spirit Medicine Conference there.
Yeah, no, it was really good.
Was there anything in particular that stuck out for you? Did you learn anything that surprised you?
Well, not that surprised me. but sure did, tell me what I needed to hear all over again. I mean, sure, I guess it all comes down to love.
It all does come down to love, doesn't it?
It is. Loving your
believe
nature,
that.
loving your neighbor, loving everybody, and loving yourself. Yeah.
It usually is pretty much the answer to everything.
It is.
And you can just let go.
Yeah, if we let that run business, being kind, I think our businesses would be a lot better, and I think humanity would be a lot better.
The corruption that I've been talking about and banging away at is all because of profits over people. Yeah. It's all because of greed and soulless bastards. There's some talk that maybe these people of influence that are causing all this trouble for us, that they're not even human, that there's some sort of an alien.
Do you remember in the elevator at the Allard case? I think you were in the elevator with me when we were going down there. In that Crown was in there.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, that guy was a robot, man. Just nothing.
Yeah, just soulless. Absolutely soulless.
Word, yeah.
And I don't get it. How do these people get to be in charge of us and doing what they're doing?
It's good to see him out.
Yeah, for sure. He's coming right up on the show here.
Yeah, that's great.
So, love is the answer. We're love-based. Life on this planet happens because of a desire. Desire is love.
Well,
and it's a desire to continue. It's that desire to survive. It's that instinct that moves us away from danger and moves us towards the things that we desire and the things that we need. And when you get up higher, I'm only talking bacteria now. I mean, when you get up higher on the chain of evolution, and you see how the role that love plays, in the creation of new beings and in the nurturing and the love of a mother for the child throughout the different species, and how that plays out. And I really think that it's love of life, and it's love of yourself, and it's love that is the answer and the driving force of life itself on this planet.
And I'm the master of anger and hate.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Because you're not always that. That's not my experience of you.
Yeah.
I see that in your posts, and I feel it. It comes through. But when we're together, Jerry, I feel the love, man. I feel your love for life. I hear your laugh. I see the sparkle in your eye. I see the way your mind works about figuring shit out and getting shit done.
Creative.
You love that stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of love going on in what drives you as well. And we live in a yin and yang universe. There's a lot of that going on with all of us. I think it's this system that's done this to you. I think that it's
it sure has. Part of life done it, but it's really put the nail in the coffin with me. But with the help of having friends like you and Cindy and other people and psychedelics, to help with mental health issues
and the wisdom of the ages.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, psychedelics can really make a big difference with mental health. That's for sure.
For sure, they do. And I think that. And I didn't know you much before you were raided, right? Some.
Right.
You came to Vancouver here, and but I found you as an upbeat, fairly even keel, having a good time, loving life kind of guy. That's how you were. That's how I see you. That's how I think that you were before this raid, and that the whole idea of the raid, of the loss, of the punishment, of the oppression of these assholes that are coming after you and hurting you and threatening you, and all you did was try to be a good guy, for fuck's sakes. You were just trying to give back and be a good guy, and I don't blame you. I don't know how I would handle that either. I think that you're reacting exactly the way that you should react based on who you are and what the fuck they've done. And
I can hold it all in and then maybe commit some horrible crime later.
Yeah, don't do that.
Instead, I put holes in my own wall and I rant on Facebook.
It is cruel. Not the best thing this is cruel and unusual punishment. Is what's going on here. If you're a fucking rapist or you're a murderer or you've done things and you've hurt people and now you're a criminal and the system's coming down on you and you're gonna go sit in a cell for a while and you're gonna lose your rights, well, I think you own some of that. I think that you think that you deserve some of that and that you can live with it because you did what you did, you do the crime, you do the time, right? But in these cases where people are just, they're breaking laws because they want to do good. They're breaking laws because the law's doing harm.
That's right.
And then They get the weight of the system coming down on them. Well, that's where you don't accept it. That's where it's really hard to fucking live with. That you're being treated like this, and all you were doing was helping people, and the system's rigged.
And you know
the system's fucked.
They hit me really hard for that particular reason, for helping people. I mean, you know, I helped a lot of people, and they
don't like that.
They took everything. You know, I didn't see them do that to anybody else. Now they're starting to do it more.
This is a war, Jerry.
Yeah.
This is a fucking war.
It certainly made
They declared it a war on drugs, and they haven't ended it yet.
It's a war on people.
It's a war on people. Exactly.
It's a war on people.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And
You know,
these are war criminals. John Horgan, you are a war criminal, and Pierre Trudeau and your son are war criminals, and every prime minister we've had up until now, and every president in the United States, everybody that's maintained this war on people's right to access the natural plants that are out there, you're war criminals.
George Bush, or not George Bush, was it George Washington? He was cool, wasn't he? Didn't you like him?
He particularly...
But he didn't like, he had slavery.
He grew hemp. He was a slave owner, and he particularly liked the Indian hemp for its medicinal value.
Yeah.
That was his favorite type of hemp. Yeah. But no, this is a cruel war. The first casualty in war is the truth. And we are being lied to this moment. We've been lied to seriously up to this point. I listed off 9 good reasons why, you know, all by themselves, each one, they should not be doing what they're doing here. And it's just wrong, wrong, wrong. And anybody who thinks it's anything right about this needs to give their head a shake and wake up. Because we have been kidnapped, folks, and we are being exploited and abused and oppressed by our kidnappers. It is literally slavery with just a fancy coating on it. You are not free, and we deserve to be free. Our forefathers fought for us to be free. We deserve that freedom, and we're not getting it from these people that we're paying to get it for us and protect it for us. So anyway, there's my mini rant, and thanks for coming on for the session. And, you know, we'll see you again next week, and keep on keeping on, Jerry.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Catch up
Thanks
with you
for
then.
having me on.
Have as much fun as you can.
All right. See you.
That's the point.
See you. I can see you, man. I can see you. Here you go.
All right. Coming up on the show, I'm very privileged to have David Hill. Dave is a warrior, and he is the force behind the pop-up 420 farmers markets that have been such a thorn in the side of these prohibitionist, monopolist pieces of shit that are trying to take away our rights. And come on, have a seat, Dave.
Sure. Is it okay if I stand?
Miss
You
the
can-
free edibles? Oh, isn't that great? Excellent. Thank you so much. And what are they?
They're just, I don't have strength numbers for you, but
Okay.
they're strong.
Oh, thank you so much. And have a great Halloween.
All right. Dave, you got some health issues going on there, and you would prefer to stand and sit. And I'm not ever going to force anybody into any position they don't want to be in, because I'm about the opposite of that. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, man, it's an honor, sir, because you don't do a lot of this. You're not one to really put your face out there very much in front of cameras unless they're there bothering you, in which case you have no problem with it, which is great. But you just keep on keeping on and making sure that it all keeps on keeping on. And I want to know some of how that all began. You're a resident of Ontario to begin with, I understand, a long time ago.
I was born in Victoria, but raised in Toronto.
Raised in Toronto, where you worked as a roofer.
Roofer, stagehand, went to college, went to university.
You got injured?
Yes. Last few years I fell off a roof, but in my 20s I had cancer in my spine.
Oh, I see.
So I had a small tumor that was breaking my vertebrae, and I already smoked weed, but it became a medicine to me. But while I was doing that, my friend was dying of MS. And in Toronto, you go to Sunnybrook Hospital, and that's where all the veterans are. And I started hanging out with veterans because my dad's like a Royal Air Force hippie. And I started making them bakables and making them edibles just for fun. And a gentleman with Parkinson's, severe Parkinson's, hands shaking everywhere, hasn't been able to do up his own zipper in a decade. I gave him a brownie, and his hands 90% stopped shaking. And he was so thrilled to be able to feed himself, he actually teared up. And to see an old vet, hard as nails, tear up being over his hands being able to work, made me wonder about the thing. I always thought it was just a harmless drug. I now know it's not even a drug, it's a mood enhancing.
So that was kind of an epiphany moment for you that...
It changed everything. And then the internet came out. So then I got to do more research instead of just at the UFT, which was where my mother went.
So what year are we in now?
Probably around 94.
94.
And the year the internet came out, which I can't remember the exact year, the research level in my household went way up.
Right.
And they hadn't had a chance to hide everything. And when I started finding out that they knew it wasn't even a drug, it wasn't harmful, since 55, I was so insulted. And I was asking my mother about it, and she's in the middle of law school, and she said, this is how society is, unless you do something about it. Now,
so what did you start to do then?
Well, I started making edibles, going into Sunnybrook Hospital, giving them away. I started growing weed. I won't lie, I sold some, but mostly just to smoke, you know?
Yeah.
I worked all my life to pay my bills, but who wants to pay for weed? You know, it's much nicer.
It's a valuable commodity, but the spirit of weed is to help people get access, and it's not about money. It's never been that. But money's important, and it's valuable, and you know, you use the money for good, and I have no problem with that. I got problem when it comes down to greed, and where people are grinding other people and preying on people that are sick and in need, and making that's where this industry has some issues, and I have some issues
even within ourselves.
With that.
Even within ourselves.
But the spirit of the plant is absolutely about helping people, and so you've been doing that for a very long time. When did you come to Vancouver?
2000, I believe it was 2000.
And what did you find when you got here?
You had more freedom here than we had in Toronto.
Right.
But it was an illusion, and I caught on to it right away. They called you sir here, but they still at least 25% of the time illegally searched you.
Right.
You know, why are you sitting in a park at midnight? Well, because I feel like it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm enjoying my life. How can I help you? You know,
yeah.
We don't like your attitude. You're aggressive. Well, how am I aggressive? I just want to be left alone. Can you have a nice night, officer?
So you got a bit of a problem with authority when it's out of control.
Well, I don't mind having a 1-minute conversation with an officer that's polite, but as soon as his questioning becomes intrusive,
right.
Then I agree. Have a problem with it.
They really shouldn't be bothering us at all unless there's a good reason for it.
And
we're the masters, they're the servants, unless they've got some pretty good information that it looks like it's probably me that did something that they should have concern about, then really the only other thing would be to warn me about a pothole in my path that
yes,
but they really shouldn't be bothering us at all without a good reason. So I have similar attitudes to you. So how long was it before you set up a table and started giving away clones and edibles and helping people get access?
Well, around when the Olympics started coming, I started noticing the cops change. And
right.
I saw their demeanor change, and I came here so bitter towards cops and was so much nicer towards them because of the more reasonable attitude of the VDP here.
Yeah.
They are much more reasonable than around the way, as long as you get the right guy.
Yeah, they have some amongst their ranks that don't make them proud, but most of them I find are reasonable and they'll talk to you.
So I saw them illegally search a kid.
Most might be a stretch, I don't know.
I saw them back when the tickets were supposed to be given out, slam a 16-year-old girl on the ground. Like her tooth bounced past me and I had a pound of weed in my bag. And I knew I didn't want to get involved, but I could not get involved.
Right.
So as I asked the officers to get a 265-pound officer to get off this 100-pound girl, they illegally search me. I tell them they're doing it illegal. I pretend my phone works, which it didn't. Pretend recorded it.
Right.
Well, they so blatantly on camera illegally searched me, and even when I showed it in court because the judge didn't like that I was representing myself, they convicted me, and I couldn't believe it because it was such a blatant illegal search. I've done nothing wrong. All I've asked them is, what are they doing with this young girl, which is my right as a citizen, and I would like to think someone would do for me.
Right.
Well, that was it. I snapped, midlife crisis. I'm like, okay, well, a new court judgment just came in, you know the case, the one where you're allowed to smoke it for medicine. Yeah. I forgot Parker, yeah. Right, and that judgment came in, and I knew I had some legal grounds to stand on. Didn't think I'd get away with it. I thought I'd get arrested in 2 weeks. So on my birthday, I just said, screw it. And we set up, and I did a bunch of seedlings about 2 months beforehand. They were just getting about this big. And we put them on a table with an ounce of weed and a scale and 500 plants, and just wanted to
Where
see
was that?
That was at Commercial Drive.
Right on.
I started there because
Right.
I wanted to rally people to come.
Right.
And I hadn't planned to do it. I hadn't organized. I just did it.
You just did it.
So as I rally people to come, you know, some people that don't have better things to do, but some people that have jobs, as I told them, if I do this 24 hours, you guys can come when you want. Just to show how many different people are accepting of marijuana. And I knew the longer that I smoked in public and showed that it wasn't a narcotic, it wasn't a drug, there's not going to be ODs, your son's not going to drop out of school because of it, he's not going to be a bum, you know, I knew the acceptance would grow.
Yeah.
And I won't lie, even the time I spend in jail has been a pleasure when I remember those faces.
Yeah. Eh?
And
you kind of wear that like it's a badge being put there by the people that put you there. You don't deserve to be there. You know that in your heart. You're sitting there. You don't deserve to be there. You just been
totally know
helping
I'm in there with them. Even the criminals don't think I should be in there with them.
I know,
because I'm a different type of animal.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
like
that's for sure.
You know, I'm more of a carnivore. You know, I eat my veggies and I like my weed and I like peace. I like love.
Yeah.
And I don't like when things are incorrect.
So it's been quite a run. You had your table of clones and edibles and stuff going on all over the city, several different locations. I remember the P&E, for example, that you were there every day, right on the corner there, a pretty big show. But you've had some issues where they've tried to stop you from doing that. Do you have any count at all of how much property they've seized off you, or how many times they've arrested you, or how many times you've actually had to go into a cell because of it?
Oh, I'm over 200 arrests. I'm
over 200.
I'm over. They've only charged me maybe a dozen times out of those 200 arrests.
I've watched them put you in handcuffs and then take them off again.
No, and when I call arrests, I mean I went to the station.
Oh yeah.
Right. I don't call the ones where they let me go in the car arrests. Those are just scare tactics.
Right.
They're trying
but
to.
They've actually taken you down to the station.
But when they're taking me down the station and they're actually charging me or saying the next time, even with a threat, I consider that an arrest.
Yeah.
Anytime I have to go see a judge, that's an arrest.
Yeah.
All the other ones are scare tactics.
Right.
But they are degrading. They are publicly humiliating, right? Like that is part of, but I know what I'm in for. I'm trying to change perceptions. I can't afford commercials on TV. I was in the middle of dealing with injuries. I had nothing better to do.
So there was the one Saturday a month at the art gallery.
That one went on for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Even when I went to jail for 6 months. Yep.
And then it was every Saturday.
Yeah.
And then when the opioid crisis hit, you guys were, eventually every day there.
24/7 for about 3 months.
Yeah. Before I get to that, though, you've also been a big part of our 420 and Cannabis Day celebrations in Vancouver since, a long ways back. You've been there with tents and tables.
Always. I always try and bring what little I can or what.
Yeah. Just so much, Dave, that you've also recruited quite a good team of faithful people that have taken your spirit of, we're just going to keep doing this because this needs to keep doing. And it doesn't matter how many times the cops come. It doesn't matter how many times, it rains. I mean, you were there all winter at Thornton Park every weekend, holding down in the rain and in the cold and in the snow. I'm not sure there's a question in there, but tell me a bit about the people that have come along that you've helped. I know you've got guys right out of the gutter and right out of addiction, and in fact, many of your crew are ex-addicts that have used cannabis to get off it. Give us a little slice of that.
Well, that's one of the biggest parts of this protest, and when it comes to medical needs, is actually helping the opioid problem. Yeah. The kids that I've always been a guy that smoked weed at a coffee shop. I've always been a public smoker because I thought it was my duty.
Yeah.
You get to know you get to know the kids. They start asking you for cigarettes. The young 20-year-old, 18-year-old. You're like, why are you out here at 2 a.m? I know why I'm out here. I just don't sleep. You know, I might as well read a book and smoke a joint, have a coffee, and look at the moon.
Yeah.
Right. When I'm seeing kids that should be at home,
Right.
and haven't been given a chance and haven't gone through high school properly, the food wasn't there at dinner time. You start running into these kids.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to, but it just been a part of me since I was young. And helping them using this protest was one of the extra birds with one stone I was doing, was to help the kids that I knew.
Yeah.
Were out on the street all the time and they had no food and they're trying to get off drugs, but they can't quite do it. They have no stable home over their head.
Yeah.
Right? I can't get them off drugs, but I can put a stable home over their head.
Yeah. And you can offer them weed and you can offer them edibles, and you've done all of that.
And not let them out of my sight.
and you teach them, because I'm so impressed when the cops arrive at how you and your crew talk to the cops about what our rights are and you know, what's the state of affairs. And it's education as well. I mean, you're not just out there providing access, but you're educating, and the people that come to your table, they've all got questions. I see it all the time, that you know, just such random demographics of people that come up to the, you know, because you just got a booth, you got a little tent and a table, and you got some weed and some edibles out there, and these people are on their way to the train station or wherever it is that they're going, and they're like, oh, and then they come and they talk, and it's really an amazing service that you provide there. What's the future for the 420 Farmers Market? You're just going to continue doing what you're doing until
it's accepted.
Until it's accepted.
Until the government admits that they did it wrong. I don't care about them making reparations, all that bullshit. They just need to admit what they did was wrong, and that we should have an ultimate freedom, and the middle class has the right to earn a living in this business without being unfairly taxed and being unreasonable in the name of fear.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to put a tax on this to protect you. They're going to do this with sugar. They're going to put a sin tax on sugar in the name of protecting our children. I'm sorry, I'm a fat guy. If I want to eat 10 Mickey D's burgers, all I want to know is the facts. Yeah. It's not good for me.
And how much is it?
And the fish sandwich is not a diet sandwich. Right? Like, other than that, even the same with cigarettes. Look what it's hard to get me to stick up for cigarettes. But I've checked for secondhand smoke studies. There's there was in 2002, there was F all. And they had commercials where the smoke is choking the baby, and we all know you don't want to be in a bingo parlor with no windows.
Sure.
You know, but I know that
you don't want to blow smoke in your baby's crib.
You know, but that's
not going on.
That car exhaust that's outside is far worse for me every day than a family with 2 cigarette smokers in the house. Open a damn window.
It's about comparisons.
It's about them. It's about them lying.
Like, you know, we live in a world with, like you say, car exhaust and alcohol, and they're worried about weed, and it's like, you know, just have a look and be realistic about what's going on in the world. Let's be reasonable.
Tell me your best opinion fairly.
In Quebec, they've just passed this Bill 2, where now the age of access for cannabis is going to be 21. It's 18 for alcohol in Quebec.
It's 18 to die at war.
At 16, you can go out and drive a 2,000-pound speeding weapon around, and on it goes. Just out of control public servants. It just drives me nuts.
Well, see, it's discrimination.
It is.
Discrimination of a culture and a choice.
Yep,
now, if we were talking about a religion I chose, what would that fall under and what rules?
Exactly.
They never had the right to make this illegal.
That's right.
You know, even whether, and I don't, your opinion, my opinion, what weed is, it's not really matters. It's what science opinion is. Now, when you use false science to make a law, to put people in jail unfairly.
That's right. Put them in jail.
It's now a human rights issue, because we can go, it's Canada jail and all that. And I was in BC jail, and compared to the Dawn in Toronto in the 90s, only time I've ever seen jail is because some cop illegally searching me for weed. It is absolutely humiliating what you got to go through.
For sure it is.
And the danger that they put me in Toronto. Now here, dangerous, not so bad, bad moment, bad time. They have cameras everywhere. The guards don't act like gang members here. That is a blessing.
Yeah.
I'll admit it, because you'll hear horror stories across Canada.
Prison is no fun.
But still, taking my freedom away, I can't imagine how many times I had to bend over and be illegally searched, and it's so degrading.
You just got out.
Just got out. And I guarantee you I was searched 400 times while I
And
was
you
in
were
there.
in there because of the farmers market at Robson Square,
The one at Robson Square.
where at the height of, well, not the height of, because we're still in the height of this opioid crisis.
It's
But
gotten worse.
This was your response to all these people that needed access to cannabis to help them get off the opioids. You had high dose edibles there, and you were giving it away to people that couldn't afford it. You were the access point. That's why you went 7 days a week, was because that's where people could go to get off of opioids and not die. And for that, we put you in a cage, did we?
That's exactly the protest that went in. Now, and if you remember, there'd be about 15, 20 kids, 20-year-olds, detoxing around me.
Yep.
About half of those I know knew them when they were young, before they were junkies.
Yeah.
I know their mothers. I
Yeah.
know their aunts. They have alcohol problems, whatever. And I couldn't. One of them said to me one time when I was going home, "What am I supposed to do till you come back?"
Yeah.
The next day, I was there all night.
Yeah.
And she's still out there. She's still trying to get off drugs. I don't know if she ever will, but I know I've given her at least 3 chances in her life.
Yeah.
I hope to give her another.
That was one of the real dark days in my mind in Vancouver history, is when they came in that Sunday night and raided that Robson Square thing that was going on. That was saving lives. And it was the media, there was certain members of the media that were hooping that up, and they were telling lies about that place, and they were getting the whole general public, against it. There was the one CTV, they sit in their office right above there looking down on you all day long, and they just couldn't stand you guys because you were breaking laws. You shouldn't be down there, you're breaking laws. They just couldn't get it. They didn't quite get the story of what was actually going on there. And that is that you were in touch with the street scene. People were in need of what you were providing for them to get off of those street drugs and not die. And the government used our tax dollars again to come in like a fucking gang and shut it down. And you ended up spending time in jail because of it. It's just so outrageous and appalling, this war that's going on us.
And mostly because they didn't like the appearance of it. It was generally well ran. Our noise levels, we had a couple incidences, but if you're downtown Robson Street, you're going to have incidences.
It was well accepted by the general public. Other than just a few people that would come through and go, oh my goodness. Most of the people would come through and go, wow, thanks for being here. And this is kind of cool.
I had neighbors there telling me who didn't smoke weed, just because when they're coming home, they like to know that there were people there. And they were thrilled that I was out there trying to help the homeless, because they came over and asked, and they came over in their fancy shoes, and they asked me straight up, what is this? I'm like, okay, well, here, I have weed on the table. I give it away for free. I take donations. What I profit from here goes back to these people. It goes into me making them edibles and giving them away for free. It goes into
sustaining
increasing
what
I could give them. And I won't lie, it did get pretty big. I had almost unlimited edibles. I was waiting for more people to come. I was starting finally, because I've never once really.
It was a success. It was supported by the community. I mean, there's lots of people came through there and could go there discreetly and get things that they needed for themselves. It was really supported by the community, and yet.
And the fact that they felt like they could smoke in public when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they'll tell me, they're like, oh, we go home and then we hide on our porch, and I live in a fancy building and I can get evicted for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't have access to a place to consume smokables.
Again, the discrimination of the marijuana smoker.
Yeah.
We're told where to smoke, we're told when we can smoke. We never should have been. When they made these laws, like I said, I have a theory that it wasn't meant to mess over the working man. But Hoover and them, I don't know if it's correct, but I know one rich man was screwing over another rich man. I don't know if Hoover had the foresight to see the odd farm boy that smokes weed getting into trouble and getting put into jail for 20 years for it. I don't think he might have imagined that, but maybe he did.
Yeah, I don't know. As they ramped up the war, it started with alcohol. They prohibited that. Although the prohibition of alcohol, you were allowed to possess alcohol. You just weren't allowed to produce it for commercial purposes and transport it across state lines. but you could have all the alcohol you wanted on you. That wasn't a crime.
It was personal.
And because they were supposed to have some respect for the rights of individuals, in the home of the brave and the land of the free. And the idea that your government could tell you that you couldn't have alcohol, well, that was just absurd. I mean, they could tell you that you couldn't go to a place and buy it, but that didn't matter because, you could go to a place and buy it anyway.
Or make money from it.
It started with that, and then, when it moved to, they ended up ending alcohol prohibition because it wasn't working, because all the violence, well, mostly because the alcohol prohibition wasn't about prohibiting alcohol from people to get to consume and drink. It was about protecting the fossil fuel interests of the Rockefellers. And so when people were just having stills in their hobby farms, or everybody had a still going on, everybody was brewing their own alcohol. And most of that alcohol that was brewed in the countryside was not used to drink. It was used to run farm vehicles and to drive. And so the Rockefellers were losing their monopoly 13 years into trying to protect their interests with alcohol prohibition so that alcohol wouldn't be used as fuel. And so they decided that they would end alcohol prohibition, but instead the government would take over the sale of alcohol. It still wouldn't be used for fuel. and then all the prohies were going to be out of work.
Yeah.
So rather than have all these government employees out of work, they found a new target to go after, and that was cannabis and marijuana. And so that became...
And neither one is still used for fuel. That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's right, and that's why. Because cannabis is the best fuel source for using alcohol-based fuel.
And then alcohol with marijuana burns very clean.
Oh yeah, I know. That's a lot of what this is about. It's not about cannabis making people dangerous and insane, which is what they said. It was about people using using cannabis for fuel and for the other industrial purposes, but mostly for fuel. This is when roads were being paved all across North America. The car was becoming the thing. And the vision of the future was going to be who's going to sell them the fuel. And the Rockefellers had that monopoly, which they got in trouble for. They had to break their monopoly up, which they didn't actually ever really do. They created a bunch of other different sub-companies, but they were still always at the top of it all. And it was always about just selling people fossil fuels because they had all these reserves and they owned all of that. But cannabis is just such a threat to that industry, and it was a threat to a bunch of other industries. The Rockefellers also heavily invested with their fuel profits in pharmaceuticals, and they set up all these institutes in universities where they would introduce all of their synthetic copycat medicines that they were getting from the active ingredients of the herbs that were actually working for people. They released a report called the Flexner Report that demonized all of the different herbal medicine schools and the herbal medicine outlets.
Never read that. I've heard about it.
It said that herbal medicine was voodoo medicine, really, and that there was no standardized dosages, that these new modern pills that were synthesized from the active ingredient had exactly the right dosage, and the doctor could know exactly how to prescribe them, and they really just demonized all of these different outlets for the herbs. And what that did was it shifted the funding, because all these places were reliant on investors and funding, and the investors shifted all of their resources and money to the Rockefeller Institutes of Modern Medicine, and that's how they virtually overnight wiped out, or within a very short period of time,
became the original drug dealers.
Yeah, they became drug dealers, and but they're the modern medicine. They're not drug dealers. It's such a weird world, isn't it? I mean, we got a war on drugs, and drugs are bad, and we should fear them, and all the rest of it. But there's drugstores on all the major street corners in any major city. They're everywhere. You go to see your doctor, he's going to give you drugs. And the illusion is that you can trust those drugs, and that you can't really trust. And that's starting with the Flexner Report, that you can't really trust all of these herbs and what that's all about. That really you need to trust the guy in the white suit there that knows, that's taken 7 years of university and knows exactly all about your body and which of these pills is going to do this and that. And we actually treat them like they're gods and they're like priests and religion, where really we need to get back to our roots, because we're made out of food. Yes. We eat food, and it's the cells of food that are our food and is our energy and is our medicine. and synthesized versions of it with all kinds of toxic side effects is not any longer, in my mind, modern medicine. That's now archaic medicine that we should really shy away from and get back to understanding how you are what you eat. Your diet determines your health. And if you're having ill health, there's lots of things in nature that will address that properly, and you can't trust those pills and you can't trust those doctors because they've been brainwashed. Anyway, I've been ranting on for a while here.
I'm on day 5 with all my pills, seeing if they are actually doing anything.
I see. I don't recommend that people go right off their meds or anything, by the way. Lots of times those things are designed so that going off, and not that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, I'm talking about your case in general. Just, my overall comments there is some value to pills and synthetic medicines, absolutely. There has been modern breakthroughs and things like that. I don't want to, totally think that, or suggest that there's no value in any of that and you shouldn't be taking any of that. I'm just very cynical and suspect of it all, and I'm a lot less cynical and suspect of how the herbs work and how hundreds of years of knowledge has been passed down through shamans and the real medical people, in my mind, throughout all these cultures, and now the actual science behind these things is coming, and that's where we should be putting our trust, is in what nature has provided for us, because we are a natural creature born into this natural environment, and these pills and synthetics are definitely a step away from that, and we better be suspect and careful about what we take in that respect.
Well, it's funny. I've been dealing with my osteoporosis and my arthritis for 2 years, but not one doctor has ever mentioned black cherry juice. Now, I'm not into myths and tiger dongs and stuff like that, but some stuff
Tiger dongs are real, man. Come on.
Royal jelly is good for you. Royal jelly is a food source. Any cancer patient will tell you when they were run down on chemotherapy and they took this, it gave us life.
Yeah.
I remember royal jelly tea in a joint, and I could go to work and people didn't know I was going through chemo. Yeah. I was younger, but I worked beside my dad, and he didn't know.
And we started this conversation about your experience with the fellow who, put his Parkinson's shaking under control with this particular herb.
Him and
Nature
my
is full of these things that are all about what we are all about. We're all very, very connected to nature. And it's just abhorrent that we've evolved through kings and queens and dictators and tyrants to now have public servants, but all of them still thinking that they can prevent us from having this nature and from accessing these things that help us. It's just so backwards and outrageous that the things that help us the most are the things that the government wants to keep us away from the most. It's like they're part of that group that's profiting off of our sickness and our disease and our ill health. And it should be the opposite. Public servants should be the ones that are a buffer between us and those people that profit off our ill health.
I think they really need to redefine propaganda. I mean, what I'm seeing is basically the same tactics Hitler used to fool people about other people. And I don't see why. Now, when you start thinking about it, marijuana is the smaller issue of a bigger issue, but it makes it so obvious because it was so obviously not wrong.
Yeah.
Whether you smoked weed or not, your kid smoked weed, your baby chewed a piece, whatever, it was not wrong. It's not harmful. It's not danger. They didn't protect us from anything. All those in the States, I've read stories about young men being raped in work camps because they had 2 plants in their backyard. There's another guy doing 100 years in Arkansas in '96. I used to donate to him. He got 100 years for 13 plants, and his parents just wanted to scare him.
So many people doing long sentences.
China, you're getting a bullet.
And around the world.
Asia, I believe Thailand's another place, you'll get a bullet.
Yeah.
For marijuana. Now, if you're robbing people...
Which might be better than a lifetime in a prison. It's hard to say.
It depends what prison.
It does.
And every prison's a prison, no matter how nice it is.
And the women that are in prison for long periods of time because they won't rat on their other family members. And that's the whole system in the States of getting people to rat on the next person up the line.
Yeah, they're allowed to lie.
So many sisters and mothers and daughters have, they're in jail right now, serving long prison sentences for nothing.
And look how much tax dollars they wasted on finding ways to control us,
I know.
whether it's marijuana or something else.
It's not their money.
We don't need this many government people to decide what's right or wrong. Right or wrong is 85% simple. The rest we can put biasness.
Hundreds of years of common law that have helped us not be perfect, but to have some reasonableness with respect to what's right and wrong. To how to determine a crime.
What's a cold-blooded killing to, I was protecting myself, that's self-defense, I was scared. There's a huge difference. Now, that's the 15% part. Everything else, the 85 is simple, right or wrong. We shouldn't be stealing, but we're not going to cut off your hand.
Yeah.
Because we're Canadians and we don't think that way. What's stealing?
And to some extent, if somebody's stealing, what's going on with that? Why are they stealing?
Why do they have to?
Did we fail them as a society? I mean, did their parents fail them as parents? I mean, there's responsibilities all around these things. And what do we do with somebody who steals? What would you do if you were a wise, loving parent of a child that was stealing things? I don't think that you would treat them the way that our state treats people, and our state doesn't cut off the hands and do some of the things that the other states do. But even so, the shaming, the stigmatization, the penalties. I mean, it's the point of putting people into cages, which is just ludicrous that we put people into cages, even if they're stealing. I mean, we need to be able to treat people better so that they don't steal. We need to be able to treat people who steal in ways that will make them think about what they're doing and maybe not want to steal anymore. Or find out why they want to steal and who they want to steal from, and what, all of those things. Are we not that far into our evolution yet that we can't figure out how to deal with people besides putting them into cages like they're rats? And having all that happens. I mean, you go into jail without a disease, you had a good chance of coming out with one. You go into a jail, you're not part of a gang, you got a good chance of coming out in one. You're going to be more violent than you were. You're not going to be a better citizen. You're not going to be happier with the government and with your punishment. You're going to be more antisocial and more prone to that criminal lifestyle. We're not solving our issue. We're not helping people. We are being very cruel. Dave, you're suffering, man. I mean, I see it every time I see you. You struggle through a lot of different issues you got going on in your body, and they're going to put you in a cage and a concrete cell. I mean, I'm just abhorred. I mean, I'm so sorry.
I won't lie.
I'm so sorry that our society is so cruel and so unevolved that we're still there doing that. I hope that you out there at home can find a way to help, that we can all find a way to stop the criminal kidnappers that are doing what they're doing to us and our families and our people, and all to protect money interests, money over people. Putting this man in a cage because he's providing cannabis to people that need it and would save their lives with it is cruel, beyond cruel. And we need to do something about it.
Well, this protest has just started. It has not. We've come a long way, but when we're not there. What's going on with Darren. They're again now starting to think about taking kids away. People forget how quick they took kids away in the 90s.
These new sanctions against cannabis and people that would deliver cannabis outside the system are just horrendous. $1 million fines, $5 million fines. 14 years in prison if you hand a 17-year-old a joint. And it might seem funny. Maybe we think they're never going to enforce this.
But it's there in paper.
They do enforce these things, and it's against the poor people. It's and people we never hear about, people that are invisible, that are all become victims of a system where we allow for this. And, it's just so wrong.
Well, we've proven time and time again dealing with the crises, such as the drug addiction and the drug addicts. If you deal with it, it's cheaper and better, and you save citizens.
They only want to deal with it if they can make money off it.
It seems
they want to find a safe supply that involves putting more money into pharmaceutical companies' pockets from taxpayers' dollars. They are not interested in actually saving anybody's life or helping them. That's not where their interests are. They're soulless.
Yeah,
they just see a dollar. They just see security for them and their families, and they think they're better than everybody else. I don't know how it works. I can't relate.
How did it get like this?
Greed.
You've been out there. I've never seen so many drug addicts walk around in a rich country in poor countries, they're not usually drug addicts, they're just poor. You know, they're just hungry kids.
Yeah, it's been a systematic breakdown of corporate greed and corruption that has got us to where we are. Now, having said that, you know, I wear the poppy. It's somewhat hypocritical. I certainly support the troops. I support anybody that went out there and was willing to take a bullet. There's no paycheck that does that. It's got to be some belief that you're going to make a better world for your family, and I give them that. I know that soldiers have been pawns of rich bastards that are actually trying to claim other countries' oils and properties and things, and that's another story. But I certainly support the troops, and I support all of the efforts of all of the people who have stood up to these powerful corporate and rich people that they've all got us here as well. And where we are is at an interesting point in history where there's forces on both sides. The ability to lock us down as slaves and take away our rights has never been more real and more dangerous than it is now with the technologies that they have and the laws that they think they can bring in. But on the other side of it, you know, the chance of maybe winning our rights and the chance of moving forward with the ability that we have for me to have this show, for me to be able to say what I'm saying, which isn't happening in a lot of other countries and certainly throughout history. So I do respect the efforts of those who have worked in so many ways and trying to get us the ability to be free, and we continue. But we're not there yet, and the forces that are keeping us from being free are still very powerful and very well leveraged and not afraid to use it on us. So yeah, the battle's not there yet. There's going to be more farmers markets.
Yes.
Thornton Park's a good place to access on weekends. Is that?
Yeah, we're starting up every Saturday.
Saturdays at Thornton Park here in Vancouver. There's other locations as well, and then I think there's other groups and people that could maybe do this, not just Dave and his crew, right? Like the whole idea is that we overwhelm these bad laws by having lots of people break them, and then they can't. Then they have to address it. If it's just in a small isolated group, then they can use fake news and badmouth what's going on there and find some, lip service justification and shut it down. But we need resilience, we need persistence, we need people that are willing to face down these authorities, talk truth to power, and do what needs to be done. And certainly what you've been doing is one of the forefront places of attack that we have. It's one of the best, as I see it. The dispensaries were really good too. We got a bunch of good people to open up dispensaries and risk what they risked in doing that. Always hopeful, of course. We try to remain hopeful.
People forget the first couple of years, they didn't know if they were getting busted the next month.
Oh man, the dispensary owners lived in fear every day that the cops were coming in. I mean, and they did sometimes, for different reasons. But and 420 was the same thing. The first people that were setting up groups, tables and tents. We were pretty nervous about all of that. I was there. I think I was the first one to set up a table with my son to have jars on it. And David Malmo Levine on the megaphone there faced right at the cops, saying, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're gonna let you people get some cannabis here, and if the cops come over and try to bother us, well, if you're going to arrest somebody, we'll hang on to them, and we'll videotape it, and we'll yell at them that they shouldn't be doing that, and that's what we'll do. So in the meantime, you can line up here and get your choice from these jars." And so that's what we did. And I think prior to that, there'd been some people that would wander around with a bag of joints and sell it that way. And then it got more and more. But I'll tell you, in those early days, it was pretty nervous, all day looking over our shoulder, watching those cops on the corner, seeing if they had, reinforcements coming. And at the end of those 420, remember, we'd go around and we'd say to everybody, okay, we're going to wrap up now.
All together, they can't follow us.
And everybody would all just wrap up their stuff and go as quick as we could. And wow, we did it. We made it. Another successful 420 or Cannabis Day that we had there. But no, there was a lot of risk, and it was real. And people were being hurt and having their properties seized and even putting into cages. And same with the dispensary owners. There was a lot of risk for them. The Compassion Club, that was a tough battle to get them established and, fighting off different forces as well. And
I remember my boys getting bear sprayed for you on Cannabis Day.
Yeah.
Trying to stop you from
They
being
tried to
arrested.
shut down Cannabis Day.
People forget that's still not that far away.
Another dark day in the history of Vancouver police.
And it could come back that quick.
It
All
can.
these rights we've gotten are not even our rights yet.
I
They're
know.
theoretical. They're imaginary.
We're trying to get them entrenched. It's difficult, You
At
got to
least-
get a government elected that's willing to put down on paper that they're going to restrict their own rights to give you more rights.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one. They'll tell you they're going to do that before they get in there, but they're
They don't
famous
want
for
you.
lying. You can't trust them.
And then they still complain they can't get nothing done or changed. And these are very simple things. That we don't need revolutions for this. This should have been done.
We need a reset of our democracy.
A total
That's
reset.
what we need.
They need
We need
and
to sit down and
responsibility.
think about this. Come on, we're free people here.
And transparency.
What do we want in a public servant? What should their role be?
Hell, why are they
Where
even
are the limits?
or why are they even having conversations we can't hear?
That's right. Why aren't they completely transparent? We have the technology. We should have, on my smartphone, I should be able to just punch in MP watch and then put in whichever MP I want to have a look at. And during his working day, and no work other than his working day, not allowed to have meetings, with any leaders of industry after work.
Yeah.
Everything during your working day, and we can watch. And we can see what contracts you're discussing and what deals you're discussing. Because right now, it is extremely obvious that they're being bribed, they're being threatened, they're making deals that are not with our best interests in mind. They're running government protection rackets for private interest groups that
People are accepting of it. They're like, oh, they're all crooks. That's not
Yes, they
good
are.
enough for me.
It's not good
It's
enough.
not good enough. It's ridiculous. If we have to hire the common man and he has to learn the job, fine. They tell me you have to be trained for these jobs. They seem mostly to be a lot of common sense decisions they've made complicated.
We have the internet. A person could get up to speed pretty quick. And
I hope when people read the internet, they also remember check the sources of the information. Don't just because I
I'm
printed
not
it.
saying all politicians are corrupt and they're all bad. They're not.
They can't be.
They don't have to be. The corporate elite that has access to our levels of power, our levers of power, don't need all those people that are elected as MLAs or MPs. They only need the Prime Minister and his office, and they need the Justice Minister, and they need a few other key people in key places, parliamentarian advisors and things. And the rest of them, they just go along to get along because they got
Pension.
elected and they're getting a paycheck and they're kind of looking after the local issues to do with their constituents. And they don't dare, and they know they don't dare really stray too far into prohibition of cannabis or what's really right and wrong or about how, the government at the higher levels are really taking advantage of their positions. And they're not acting like servants.
Not at all.
And so... it's a corrupt system that's been evolving over time, and we need to reset it. We need to have some good people that don't put profits over people get together and have a new sit down and a new conversation about what it means to be free, what it means to be a public servant, and what we want to pay people to be doing and where their limits are and how, like you say, transparent they are, and that they've got to be accountable, damn it. That's got to be a tough job. If you're going to take that job where you get to decide the fate of people,
It'd be decade and a half of
you
work.
got to know that if you fuck up, buddy, that's a real fuck up.
Our country is going to be like that for 100 years.
If you're a doctor and you decide to drug and sexually abuse your patient, that's way worse than just being some other dude that drugged and took advantage of somebody they met at the bar. Way worse.
Yes.
Way worse. And if you're going to be a public servant, well, that's a fragile place to be. And it could be a dangerous place to be if you don't have your heart in the right place. But if you have your heart in the right place and a spine, and you understand that your job is to actually protect every individual as a sovereign being from the corporate people that want to exploit people, no problem. You be proud of yourself. You go do a good job for the people, and when you walk down the street, we'll be saying to our kids, hey, Johnny, look, there's Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, and they're good people, and they serve the public good, and they serve the public interest, and they're protecting us from these people that would otherwise enslave us. That's what the role of public servants needs to be in this free country of ours, instead of thinking you won the golden ticket, and now you get to be a dictator and satisfy all the needs and wants of your friends and those people that helped you get there at the expense of the rest of us. That's the system we got right now, and You know, we got to fight this.
Definitely needs pride and responsibility.
Well, Dave, you're such a warrior in that respect, and you're relentless, and you're not going along with all of this, and I can't thank you enough. Without you, it's like a rudderless ship. When you're in jail, things start to fall apart. When you're here, you've got that fatherly governing sort of oversight and wisdom, and we need you, man, and I can't thank you enough for being willing to persevere through all of the pain that you live with and face down the man day after day after day. I mean, I didn't bring you here to embarrass you, but you've always been a hero to me and somebody that, shows the way of not backing down and continuing to do the right thing in the face of great risk to yourself. And I'm really happy that you came on the show and that you're going to keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to support you in every way I can, as always. And just thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. I couldn't. I'm flustered. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you didn't come here to get lauded, but you deserve it.
I'm used to being in the trenches.
I don't know what drives you. You told us a little bit. I tried to get to some of that. What made you mad and what got you with the passion that you got. But whatever it is, it has been so valuable for us here in Vancouver to have you guys doing what you're doing that takes some of the focus and pressure off of the other areas of activism and the other fronts and allows us all to have some room to move. And we've needed you. We still need you. And I thank you. And have as much fun as you can. Thanks for coming on the show.
And I'm sorry we got off topic with that. It's such a big issue.
Oh, man, we could talk for hours.
If you were asking why I got into it, there's 1,000 reasons. But that veteran always stands out with me.
I think we got a good sense of who you are and where you're operating from, and it's right from here.
It was a pleasure, Neil. Thank you for having me.
We'll see you very soon, I'm sure. Thornton Park, Saturdays.
Yeah.
And hi there. On from there. So I'm here at 41st and Night outside of the Stressed and Depressed Dispensary. It's one of the original dispensaries that's been around for the last few years, and one of the last ones remaining here in Vancouver. Most of them have been shut down because of threats and the new legal system. And this store too is in queue to get its provincial license, and that'll be happening shortly. But in the meantime, they've been given permission. It's been going on for a little while now, at least a week, by the provincial authorities to continue to do what they're doing and just sell the rest of their stock. Basically, that's what they're supposed to be doing. But this store is so crazy busy. Like, the parking is crazy. It's really hard to find a spot. Inside, there's just so many people in here. If you don't want to be on camera, don't look, so we're going to be posting this. They're just crazy busy. And you don't see this in the government stores at all. When I was here the other day, there was long lineups. You couldn't even get in there. So this is what the people want. This is what they want to support. The government stores are not selling the good quality cannabis that this store is and the other original ones are and were. And people don't want to go to them. Their pricing is way too high. The packaging is ridiculous. The weed is old and stale. They don't even know how to cure it or even consider that. And so this store is having to convert over to be a government store as well. And it'll be empty when that happens. But in the meantime, it's still one of the few that people in Vancouver can go to and get good quality locally grown cannabis. Yeah, that's what Vancouverites want to support. Actually, the night I was there just last night, I made that video. Wasn't as profound as the previous night that I was there, and they told me, come back tomorrow night and see what happens. But they have been just packed to the gills at that dispensary for the last quite a while as they try to move out the rest of their stock, which is what they've been told that they can do. And it's really sad that they're now going to have to, sell out of all the different good products that they have, only to be replaced by the crap that the government thinks that people should be smoking, and we don't think anybody should be ingesting at all. And so obviously, all those people that are right now, they've found a place where they can get what they want, and that's why it's packed every night. There's very few of those left in Vancouver now. The ones that are doing a really steady business. Because nobody wants to shop at the government stores, and it's really, really sad that this is what our public servants think is a good use of their time that we're paying for, that they should be trying to provide the public with cannabis that they don't want, and use our tax dollars to shut down the access to cannabis that we do want. They didn't listen to us. They don't care about us. A whole part of their legalization is that they get to continue to put the screws to the activists and the people that have been demanding rights and access and freedom for cannabis and freedom in general. They don't like us. They don't like the idea that maybe we could win this thing. And so this is part of their plan, that they get to be the ones in charge of providing cannabis. Trudeau's the only dealer in Canada, and all of his boys are the ones that you have to get your weed off of, and he doesn't give a shit about you. He just wants to charge you more than it's worth and make a bunch of money, because that's all he cares about. And he's a war criminal, and he should be taken out of office, and probably much worse than that. And Mr. Horgan, you as well. You promised me when we had dinner together before you were Prime Minister, or at least I was at a dinner that you were at. It's not like you invited me over to your house or anything. But we did have a good conversation that night, I thought. I did understand that you're a politician and you might be lying to me. Well, it turns out you were. You told me in no uncertain terms that you were going to lead the charge to protect access to medical cannabis for people if you got to be Premier. And shortly after that, you got to be Premier. And instead of doing that, you have brought in these archaic rules and laws against other people having dispensaries, and your dreaded and hated and despised CSU, so improperly named. They're not protecting communities. They're bringing danger to communities. The dispensaries that they're raiding, those staff members and those patients are not feeling safe because of the CSU, I'll tell you. They're feeling threatened and they're scared, and that's no way to behave. You're the Premier of this province. You took an oath. You owe it to the people that elected you, that are the free sovereign beings of this supposed free country, to do what's right. And you are not doing what's right, Mr. Horgan. So shame on you for that. And I think your repercussions will come down the road here. So one of the things that we've been doing that is trying to counter all of this so-called legalization is to give away cannabis edibles and cannabis in care packs to people on the downtown east side that would otherwise be struggling and risking their lives with street drugs and opioids. And we've been doing this for 2 years and 9 months now, thanks to some extremely generous donators that help us out every time that we're there. We're there twice a week. We go to Vandu at 380 East Hastings Thursdays and Sundays at noon, and we're greeted by a long lineup of people that have been waiting hours and happy to be there because they're going to get some cannabis edibles that are going to keep them off of the street drugs and keep them alive. And this is still contrary to the Cannabis Act. This is still not sanctioned by the government. And I don't think they will, because, man, would we ever expose them for how corrupt and rotten they are if they ever did. But we've had no interference from government or police in all the time that we've been doing this. And we do make a spectacle out of it on purpose. We are trying to demonstrate that cannabis is safe, number one. That you can give out high-dose edibles to people and no one has ever been significantly harmed in any way by that. I think that most of the people in our lineup will tell you that they've eaten too much and that was not a good experience, and that they would prefer not to do that again. But in finding the right dose, sometimes that's what happens. But the right dose really does help people in very profound ways. It helps with the pain that they're trying to kill, that they're using the opioids and the street drugs for, but it also gives them a much better sense of well-being and health in a lot of other different areas. It helps them sleep, it helps them with their diet, helps them with their overall pain issues, and so that it really is a very beneficial thing. And we've been trying to demonstrate the safety of cannabis and the efficacy of cannabis with respect to how much it helps people with our project, and we have been very successful with it. The City of Vancouver, in response to what we have been doing, and along with the High Hopes Foundation that does a similar project, not quite the spectacle that we do and not quite to the volumes that we do, but still part of the impetus that prompted the city to put forward and then pass a motion to allow cannabis to be dispensed specifically to address the overdose crisis with low barrier access. And low barrier access means good quality medicinal flowers and concentrates at reasonable, accessible prices. And to target the opioid crisis, it has to mean high-dose edibles. The edibles that we give out at our program, these ones, there's 5 in there. There's 50 milligrams each of those 5, so there's 250 milligrams there. These are 80 milligram jelly bombs. This one is THC, and this one is pure CBD. And we give those out along with a combination of other edibles and things too. The care packs have 500, 600, 700 milligrams of cannabis per care pack, and hopefully that gets people through to the next time that we're there. We also give out these creams. This one from the Medicinal Cannabis Dispensary. This one comes from Twisted Extracts. And these are miracle creams. These are products that cure up people's skin problems, skin cancers. There was a fellow that came to the project. He had got the cream the time before, and he showed his hands, which had been very badly burned with bleach. And 2 applications later of this particular cream, and it just about looks like a normal hand. There's just a couple little spots left to go. So we're very pleased that we have donators that care and help us with this project, and that there's a huge group of volunteers as well. We also give out dabs to people, proving there again the safety of cannabis and the efficacy. People are warned about eating too much. People are asked about how much dabs they think they're able to take. And we haven't had any greenouts. We haven't had anybody hit the pavement from smoking too much, which is, one of my concerns with dabbing, because it's a highly concentrated cannabis. But with proper instruction and guidance, these are not issues, and they absolutely need to be made available as an option for people so that they don't have to go to the streets to kill their pain and use drugs that are going to risk their lives. So that's our update for the CSP. There's a lot of other things moving and shaking with the CSP behind the scenes that have yet to come to fruition. All these things are in process, and I'll make more announcements about those as time goes on. But suffice to say that we are a force, and hopefully we are going to force the availability and access to cannabis for medical purposes to offset the overdose crisis, and we can bring back the medical dispensaries that we so dearly need and that we so dearly deserve. Coming up in the cannabis world, people are already right now in their cars and heading to Saskatoon for the Prairie Harvest Medicinal Cup, and or heading to the Kootenays. There's also on the same weekend Halloween happening, which is a membership event, but if you go there and buy a ticket, that makes you a member, and they're going to have vendor booths inside there. They're stringing out Halloween for a little while. I don't know about that, but that's up to them. Just having as much fun as they can is fine with me, and hopefully that's the purpose, and to get people connected and to provide access with different vendors and different people that can help people with their medical needs. So that's the Prairie Medicinal Harvest Cup coming up this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Saskatoon. If you don't have a ticket, it's not too late. If you want to be a vendor, it probably isn't too late, but it might be. But anyway, Jeff would like to hear from you and support that event. That's the Friendly Cup. That's where all of us good friends, from across Canada and other places get together and share some good cannabinoids and judge them so that medical patients understand what the best medicine is out there for them. There's also in November, on November 25th, MJ Malloy, the cannabis professor at UBC, is putting on a conference there, a public symposium about cannabis and its role in harm reduction. And we're very privileged with the CSP to be able to take part in that. We're going to have Professor Malloy on as our guest on the 19th of November and talk to him about that harm reduction symposium and what he's finding out about the role that cannabis plays in harm reduction, which we all know it is one of the best harm reduction tools that there is out there in the marketplace. So pay attention to those events coming up. And also here on Pot TV, I want to thank Cannabis Culture for allowing me the use of this space, and Neil, my amazing producer, for helping me do the show. We're here at 307 West Hastings Street, and you can come here and shop. They've got a great store downstairs with pipes, bongs, rolling papers, the urban shamans down there for your psychedelic needs, and a lot of great reading material there as well, and just a lot of fun stuff going on here at Cannabis Culture. It's been that way for a long, long time. And I want to thank my guests on the show today, David Hill, for all of his efforts and what he does to maintain a presence that they can't ignore. And for Cindy Heemeryck for coming in and sharing the 420 session with me, Jerry Martin for the Martin Medical Moment, and for all of you out there that are following all this stuff, thank you for watching the show. Do what you can. You know, we're all crew here on this planet. Times are interesting, but times are crucial. And we need everybody to play whatever role that you think is a good role for you. If you can have some sort of a mild epiphany about what's right and wrong in our world and decide that you can do something about it, well, we could use your help. And I'll tell you, it's depressing when you really look at just how these powers that be manipulate us and have co-opted our so-called democracy here and taken away the rights and freedoms that we deserve. That is rather depressing. But if you're just sitting at home and thinking about that and moping about that, and you're smoking a joint to feel better about that, well, you'll feel a lot better about that if you get out and do something about it, or if you write a letter or make a phone call or decide that there's something that you could do that just might make a little bit of a difference. And all we need is a little bit of a difference. Everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something, and just something little has the potential to have great impact. And you just never know. If you educate one person and that person goes on to educate 10 more, well, you can see where that can go. So let's just all do whatever we can do, because that's more fun than not doing nothing about it. And having some hope and something to do is better than not having hope and nothing to do. So there are lots of things that we can do, and I want you to use your creativity and think about a way that you could throw a wrench in the machine of the man that wants to be your boss and own your ass and tell you got to pay him premier buck for that piece of nature that really actually just belongs to you. So thanks for watching. Go out and try and change the world and just have as much fun as you can doing that.
Hi there, welcome to the 420 Lifestyle Show. I'm Carly Marley. She's taking a dab. Thanks.
We can play the Sickamoose video.
Oh yes, Sickamoose video. Let's play the Sickamoose video.
Yeah, so that's my home. That's like all over the place, I guess.
It helps the speaker lead his audience into the scene he describes.
Oh, I'm rolling out the fattest joint I could possibly fit in this paper. If it was any bigger, it would explode.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
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 Hi. It's high noon here in the studio.
Look at it. Look at the bud. Right there.
And it was just like so many people, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I was like, I have to cross it.
Acronyms, baby.
I love
so
how
you paid
they're
$8
like,
for half a pencil.
I love.
just put it out there.